So hopefully you were able on your own to populate these fields with the current value of the subject. I'm going to show you how I did it, but you should have had something that looks like this in the end. I click on About Widget Corp and I get Widget Corp in the field as well as its position. I click on Services and I get position number 3 with services in the subject name, and it's pulling in Visible as well. Let's look at the code to make sure you got the same thing. I'll open up Edit Subject, and let's take a look here first at the top of it. It should have been easy for you to put in the Select Subject menu name right here. Just echo that into the value of the input field. And for position, we had to do something a little different, but we've done this before. We ended the quotes on the echo after the option value and started them again here. And then in between, did a test. If position equals count, then echo back selected. And that's how we tell HTML that the option has been selected. It's just to put space selected. It will do that if it's selected. And the way we know it's selected is if position equals count. And then down here on Visible, we have radio buttons. So the way we tell them if they're selected is with space checked. So we check to see whether or not visible equals 0, and if so, it's checked, or visible equals 1, and it's checked. And I also went ahead and changed it from Add Subject to Edit Subject, which is appropriate since now we're editing the subject. So now that we have a form that's successfully reading in information from the database, we're ready to create the submission part, where we're going to receive the data on the same form. Before we go into the SQL and everything we're going to need for that, there's one important change that we need to make here. I wanted to really highlight this change for you. Submit buttons will work if we simply have a value. The value is what shows up on the Submit button, and it's also what gets submitted as a value when we submit the form. But in order for it to submit as a value, we're going to need to have a name here. So I'm going to go ahead and call the name Submit. That's easy enough to remember. And I'll just always give my submit buttons this name, Submit. And what that allows us to do is now we can test for whether or not Submit shows up in our form data. If it's a post variable, without name, there will be no value for Submit in the post variables. But once we add name in there, now we'll have a post variable called Submit, and its value will be Edit Subject. And we could test that value if we wanted, but what I'm really interested in is the fact that we have a value at all, because that'll give us a way at the very top of our page for us to do our form validation only if the page has been submitted. So we can say if is set the post value called submit. And if that's there, then we can do our form processing. That's how we'll know whether we're looking at this page for the first time, which is what we were just doing when we were clicking on each one, or whether or not we're actually receiving post data onto this page. So if it's not set, it'll just display the page, the same thing we just saw when we clicked on it. But if it is set, then before it does that, it'll process the form. So that's a key feature of how this is going to work on this single page submission, is we have to have a post variable set that'll let us test whether or not the form has been submitted. So now that we know we have a form submitted, we can do our basic form validation. And I'm just going to use those same loops that we did before. I could have put these into functions, but I haven't. If you wanted to, you could. And once I've gone through and validated the forms and made sure that I'm satisfied with them, we know that the next step is to get them ready for MySQL. And we can do that the same way we did before by using MySQL prep, the function we wrote, to sanitize those post variables. But with an update command, we have one more thing that we need to get. We're going to need to have the ID that we want to update. And we can do that by doing MySQL prep on the get that we sent with the link, subject, SUBJ. Oops, I'm missing a P on prep. There we go. Now, performing MySQL prep on the subject ID probably won't do anything, so it's not going to hurt us, and it might end up helping us, because we don't want to trust what comes in on that URL string. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and put an additional measure here at the top, and I'm going to test to make sure that it's actually an integer at all. And we can do that with a function called int_val. I'm going to do that on subj. So if subj comes in and int_val processes it, and it's equal to 0, then we'll do a certain action. What that function does is takes any value. If it's an integer, it passes it through unchanged. But if the value is not an integer, it turns it into 0. So we haven't come across that yet. We've seen how we could actually just check and see, is it an integer? But what this will do is convert anything else. If someone put text up there or something like that, it would convert it into 0. And then as a consequence, we can do a redirect to. And let's make it go to content.php. So the very first thing we'll do is check whether or not we got a valid subject ID. And if we didn't, then we'll just throw the user to another page. So now that we have values that we feel good about, we're ready to check and see whether or not we received any errors during the validation process. And if not, to go ahead and write our update statement. And that's what we'll do next.